Good morning and welcome to our second week of Get on the Bus Reader's Advisory. My name is Sarah from the Wyoming State Library, and today we'll have a presentation from Tamara from Albany County talking about indirect ways of working with Reader's Advisory Services. I'm just going to go over a few program pieces and then we'll pass it off to Tamara. All of the archived webinars will be located at getonthebuswyoming.wordpress.com, and I'll show you that right now. The first page has a little bit of information, and at the bottom has the remaining schedule, which I didn't have up last week. We have all of the program titles, and after this week, starting with May, we will have some short presentations by library staff throughout Wyoming discussing their favorite genres and topics in Reader's Advisory. We certainly won't cover them all, but it'll just be a fun way to get to learn about some different genres that we may not normally read. Each program has homework questions attached to it. We'll quickly look at some of the ones from last week. The archived video can be found on the program page, and then there are 2 to 4 questions on each program. Anyone who participates in the homework questions will be eligible for prizes. We have $25 Amazon gift certificates to give away, and if we get a lot of participants, we're hoping to be able to give away a WLA registration for the conference this September in Cheyenne, and possibly a Nook e-reader. So we'll only be doing that if we get a lot of folks to participate, so be sure to tell your coworkers. And while the information on the getonthebuswyoming.wordpress.com website will be up for a while, to be eligible for the prizes, you'll want to complete that by May 31st, which will go a few weeks past the presentations. I don't think there's anything else I need to cover here. For those of you that will have questions or comments, I will be moderating those at the end of Tamara's presentation. And we'll go ahead then and get started with today's presentation.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm getting myself set up here. And hopefully everyone can see the title of the presentation today. We are going to be talking about indirect Reader's Advisory. So if you've been attending any of the earlier webinars about Reader's Advisory in general, same principles. We're still looking at connecting people with the books that suit their taste or mood. The challenge with indirect Reader's Advisory is that we're doing it without actually talking to people, which poses its own challenges, but is also a really fabulous opportunity for marketing for both libraries and librarians and what we do. So to get started, just a definition of the indirect Reader's Advisory. And we'll start in the bottom left corner here. The basic principle is that there is no direct live contact between readers and the reader's advisor. So there's no conversation being had in real time. It can take place online, and you'll notice, there are in-library options for doing this. The most obvious of those is going to be something like a display of materials on a particular theme. So when we talk about Reader's Advisory based on genre or theme, in the library, your Reader's Advisory, indirect Reader's Advisory is going to be a display or the bookmark that you can hand out without actually having the verbal conversation. External indirect Reader's Advisory is those things that we do that occur outside the library. And for the purposes of this conversation, it's going to deal mostly with situations and places and displays that have to do with people who aren't regular library users. So this is really our marketing tool or our marketing key. And then there are also online or virtual options that we'll look at. But again, even up at the top here, you've got, we are still working to connect our patrons with books that they're going to enjoy or suits their mood, has those specific appeal characteristics that you may have heard Cass talk about already. So the goal is the same. We're just doing it without the verbal conversation. One of the first questions that comes up is, why would we do this? And obviously there are some, again, some marketing and some PR ideas here. But there are a lot of reasons that people don't come and specifically have conversations with librarians. And as we all know, when we're talking about reference interview strategies, one of the biggest challenges is getting someone to actually walk in the door and come talk to us about their questions so that we can help them out. So there are some reasons for doing the indirect model. One of those, we can reach reluctant or shy users. The examples I always like to use are, like the engineering professor who's really, really into, horror or vampire fiction may not want to come to the desk and ask somebody about that. Or the president of the Altar Guild who's really into romance or something along those lines. Maybe they're just shy in talking with someone. Maybe they are actually slightly embarrassed about what they're interested in. And this gives them an opportunity by using these indirect models to still get them the information that they need. Another fabulous reason for this, it's available 24/7. These are things that we can do outside of our library's hours. And then again, the marketing tool idea, it makes us visible. The idea of taking some of these reader's advisory techniques outside of the library is a fabulous visibility tool for us. In the retail world or in the marketing world, once somebody has walked through the door, you've already made the sale. So the patrons we have walking into our buildings, we've already made that sale. They've already come in. Whether or not they talk directly to us, they understand the library, they've been in it, they can pull materials. It's the folks who don't know the library or who haven't been inside it, who haven't used our services, that we will talk about targeting for some of these indirect reader's advisory, because they're still interested in a lot of the same things. They just may not know it yet. And one of the really interesting statistics and models that I've got here for you is the fraction of words from different sources as it's changed over the years. For all of those folks who may say the book is dead or that we're not doing as much reading as we used to, this gives you a pretty clear description of where the reading is moving to. So this is actually a chart of where we are hearing and seeing language on a regular basis. So you'll notice 1960, about half TV, 26% in print. The light blue is radio. 1980, a lot more TV, less than half as much print, and lots of radio, which is really interesting. Some phone conversations. And then 2008, which is when the survey was done, 9% print. So a lot less print, but that 27% computer, the majority of that is actually reading print language. It's not listening to it like you are now for this webinar. So the reading is going on. Our users and our readers that we're trying to provide readers advisory services to are still reading. And if you compare that, if you add the print and the computer together, they're reading a lot. But they're not necessarily finding those things in the same places. They are not reading materials by checking them out at the library or by going to the bookstore. They're seeing them in other places. And we want to make sure with our readers advisory services that we are actually meeting them where they are. So to get us kicked off with some ideas here, we're going to start by talking about indirect readers advisory that we can provide within the library. So we've got a few different ideas here. We're going to talk about displays, print materials, which we're all familiar with making the bookmarks with the lists of the different award winners, or if you liked Harry Potter, try this. I include within the library, I include our websites that are specific to our libraries, because typically in order to find and use our websites, we are talking about patrons who regularly use our library. Again, it's that group that is already familiar with the library, they're already regular users, we've already made the sale. They're already walking in our door. So to start off with, displays. And these are just some examples. You'll notice there's 4 images here. We'll look at each of those in turn. All different sorts of display ideas. We're providing indirect readers advisory. We all make up displays based on theme, based on months, holidays, that sort of idea. But here are some really specific guidelines that not only display our wares and are eye-catching to patrons walking through, but actually perform that service of readers advisory, because it's targeting a particular population and it's showing them a particular theme or genre in a way that they can actually match it up with those appeal characteristics that they're looking for. So some of the guidelines for creating displays, and we all have these options, we don't always, But you want to place them in specific areas and be aware of where those are. You want to put them past the transitional or decompression zone. If you've done work with marketers or had to deal with, been fortunate enough to deal with building a new library or doing a remodel, very often folks will talk about transitional or decompression zones, and that is usually roughly 12 to 20 feet inside your front door. And in a supermarket or in any other retail environment, you'll notice that typically from the time you open the front door to the time you actually get to a place of selecting items or doing business, there's this decompression zone built in. In supermarket, it's where the carts are. But what it does is it gives your users the opportunity to, their eyes adjust to the light, they reorient themselves to their surroundings. The idea here is that you don't place anything really important that they need to read inside that zone, because their brains and their eyes are all adjusting and decompressing and reorienting to their surroundings. So ideally, you don't have within 3 feet of the front door a massive display and a whole bunch of handouts, because that's just something that they are probably not going to be able to really digest on their way in. So other general rules, and obviously this is really common for all of us, knee to eye height shelves and tables. Don't put them really low, they're hard to see. Unless you've got a lot of room for people to step back and see things, or the angled shelves. But that knee to eye height, again, is the same as when we're shopping for food in the grocery store. The most visible is going to be most likely selected. This one I find interesting, and this is something that I have struggled with, but it really does make a difference. Physical materials only. If you have a display on a particular topic, and we'll look at some examples, do the books. Do the DVDs, do the physical items. Don't lay in your bookmarks with lists of things or policies or flyers about the next big, anime night or something like that. If you're trying to sell a particular or market a particular item, give them the opportunity to just concentrate on that. And you'll find that your displays are, number one, a little easier to keep straightened up, but also more effective, because as people shop for books or are looking for a specific genre, they are really focused on that one thing. And providing them too much information, as we all know, doesn't necessarily help them. So stick with physical materials in your displays. Other placement ideas and suggestions, at queuing points where people are waiting, but not where business takes place. So if you routinely have a line waiting at the desk, then a good place for a display might be back away from the desk where the third or fourth person waiting in line typically stands. They know they're waiting, they have nothing else to do, they'll look at stuff, they might pick it up. By the time you get to the place of business up at the circulation desk, number one, you don't want them distracted, but also you want them to be able to focus on the business at hand. And you, as a circulation person, don't need them picking up 5 or 6 different books and thinking about it while there's a line behind them. So, and this is true of most materials, if you're trying to market something, if you're trying to connect them with things that are going to suit their mood or taste, don't confuse them. Try to make it as simple as possible. And if they're just waiting with nothing else to do, again, at that queuing point rather than at the actual serve desk. And obviously within shelving, facing out, anytime you can face materials out, that's going to be huge. And if you've got, any items that are going to be read-alikes that you want to focus on, just lay them on the shelf right next to, or stand them up on the shelf right next to things that are similar. Face out as much as possible. And our shelving doesn't always allow it, but, make it work as much as you can. So some examples here. And this is a gorgeous new school library somewhere. The fixtures that they've got, you'll notice in the shelving, they've actually built in displays on the ends of each set of octagonal shelving, so that books do face out on the corners. And you'll also notice that in the back, you can see that there's slat wall at the end of each shelf. This is the easiest way to do a display on your shelving. And you can buy the slat wall chunks and just put them over your regular end panels. But to be able to display items at the end of ranges is hugely visible. It's one of the most selected points because people are, again, it's that transition zone between I'm looking at the spines of books, I'm following things around. As you come around a corner and you're looking at something, your brain turns off for a second because you know not to expect to see more call numbers right there. And there's the opportunity to actually give them some new information or a shiny new cover. This is a fabulous display for Indirect Reader's Advisory. You'll notice it's very clearly marked, gobble up some gourmet reading. It's cookbooks. There's some props in there. There's no extraneous text. There's no flyers. There's no extra gunk all over the place. It's just the books, the description, and some props to sell them. People are going to know what it is as soon as they look at it. There is one negative thing about this display, and the only thing I can come up with is the fact that it's behind glass. So it's beautiful, and they're totally marketing those books well. Anybody looking for a cookbook is going to just be in awe of that, but it doesn't encourage them to reach out and grab the book. And we'll talk about that in just a second, about how to actually promote them doing that, because often with our displays, if you really make it look nice, people are going to think they're not supposed to touch it. So there is a way to encourage them to do so, and we'll talk about that in a second. There are some other ideas about doing displays of materials for Reader's Advisory. You can get creative with this. This is a just returned display. So maybe if your shelving's a little slow, maybe you don't have things getting back on the shelf as quickly as you'd like, maybe that's a bonus. Maybe you can create a just returned display so that all of those high-circling items can simply go on a shelf until somebody has the opportunity to shelve them. But this shows people, for all of those folks that walk into the library and say, well, what is everybody reading? What should I read next? What's popular? What have other people checked out? This is really clear. Label it just returned. People are going to browse through it and know that it's something that has been checked out recently, may or may not be really popular. And, it provides its own Reader's Advisory service simply by being there. The other one that I've heard of that I've personally never tried is to create a display of never checked out. And I don't know that it would encourage them to check them out. I think there have been mixed responses to it. But if you're looking for a way to market some of those books and keep them from being, all those lovely books we've purchased that may or may not be popular, create a display of books that have never been checked out. And put those up there and see if it actually gets them to move. And you can get as creative as you like with some of these display ideas. Final display example, and I love this. If you're not familiar with the Swiss Army Librarian blog, SwissArmyLibrarian.net has some great observations on marketing, displays, all sorts of library issues. This is his discussion and a picture of seating book displays. And you'll notice in the foreground that there's a book stand that's empty. They noticed in their library that they would create these lovely displays, and then they'd have people ask if it was okay to take the book. And so rather than repeatedly answering those questions, or potentially not have people check materials out because it looked as if they shouldn't, they simply added an empty book display thing at every single display. So for every single one of those displays that are in the library, you simply put out an empty little display tool so that everybody gets the idea that somebody's already taken one. So that's the seating book displays idea. So no matter how beautiful of a display you create, just put one empty one up there, and then people realize they can check them out. So that's just some guidelines on displays. Again, it could be themed, it could be topical or circulation based. But again, this is all providing indirect Reader's Advisory services because people are able to see it without having to actually talk to the person. Moving on, still in library, print. And these are the ones we're most familiar with for Reader's Advisory services, especially the indirect model. Bookmarks, obviously we create those all the time with read-alikes, and lists. These are just a couple of examples. I'm not going to spend a lot of time because these are things that most of us are familiar with or have done in the past. This is Mountain Prospect Public Library's If You Like section of bookmarks. And you'll notice they have a ridiculous amount, somebody put in a lot of time, bookmarks based on author. So they have these, and they are located just outside the decompression zone. So people who walk in the library, they walk around, they take a few steps in, they look around as they reorient themselves. This is on the wall. And so if they're looking for a particular author, I'm pretty sure I saw Stephen King in there somewhere. Yes, there he is. They can simply grab that little bookmark with his name, and it's got a list of read-alikes. So if you like Stephen King, try these authors. And you can get as detailed as you want on these. You could put in call numbers, you could put in all that type of information, or annotations if you wanted to do, some lengthier ones. But just having a resource like this for your patrons is going to help immensely. And you don't have to get quite as, as industrious as Mount Prospect did with all of these different authors. But boy, wouldn't it be nice if we all had time to do that, because we'd be able to hand these out and let people select their own very quickly. When it comes to creating lists, one of the biggest things is to create clear genre lists. Don't let it be a hodgepodge. People are less likely to continue to use them or grab one and take it with them if it's not really, really obvious. So the one here, and you can't read the text, and I apologize, but it says Aragon read-alikes, really specific. So if you like Aragon, specifically this thing, here are the books that are like it, with short annotations. And the best possible place for this list is going to be probably inside one of those acrylic display holders on the shelf next to Aragon. Because instinctively, our patrons, when they're looking for something new, start with what they already know. So if you've got a kid who really likes Aragon, then they are probably going to walk to the shelf where Aragon is, it's familiar, and start from there when they start their browsing. So if you can locate these types of lists, or even the bookmarks, if you've got something that will display without letting them poof all over the floor, next to the books that they're similar to. And obviously you'd want to keep some of these at the desk, but one of the suggestions is, again, you don't want a lot of this type of print information at your place of doing business, because it is a distraction. And it does take away from, if you are having a verbal discussion with someone at the desk, you want them to be able to continue that and not be distracted by print materials near them. So create these lists. They're wonderful. Make them really clear genres or very specific to a type of book or a type of theme, and then locate them near the materials that they're most similar to, and people will see them and use them. The final one for in-library indirect reader's advisory is your website. Typically, if people are using your library's website, it's somebody who's familiar with the library. Now, there are those who aren't familiar, haven't stepped inside, but are using it, but those are fewer and further between. So we're going to target this as these are folks that have used your library. They may go to the website to check the calendar of events. They may be interested in reading, staff picks, if you've got anything like that, or having an actual book discussion online. And they start with your website as the main jumping off point. And this is just an example. This is library guide from High Plains Library District in Colorado. Really simple. You'll notice that there's not a whole lot of boxes on the page. You've got welcome to the staff picks. You've got an adult pick of the week, a teen pick of the week. Further down, there's one for children. And immediately next to it are links that take you directly into the novelist reader's advisory databases. So it's very simple. You only have one item for each particular age group, and then that immediate reference to novelist. If you need more help, if you're looking for this and you're already here, click here to go to novelist. So it doesn't need to be elaborate. You could, on any of these, create a comment field where people could actually write back, oh, I read that book, that's a wonderful thing. But it's much harder to maintain and manage that way. So if you're looking for a way to make recommendations and do some of that indirect reader's advisory from a very simple perspective through your website, just a pick of the week based on different age levels, and then make sure that Novelist and all of those other database resources that the library owns, that there's a link to them right there. And it'll be a wonderful reference for your patrons that already go to the website. So that's the within the library bit, and I'm going to zoom on over here to outside the library. So these folks, when we're talking about doing indirect reader's advisory, we're going to be talking about folks who may or may not use the library. They may not be familiar with how it works. They may not even know that they want to read a particular book because they may not have read a book in years. And we've all dealt with some of those where they walk into a library for the first time and say, oh, I didn't know you guys did that or had that. Or, I love the comments where people, I haven't read a book in 10 years, Well, okay, here we go. So outside the library, some different indirect reader advisory tools. And the first one is my personal favorite because I want billboards, personally. I want to locate a billboard next to every movie theater that has a rotating, did you like this movie, and a list of the current movies that are being shown. then you should go to the library and check out and have a list of 3 or 4 books that kind of match up with the themes of the movies that are being shown. I think that would be ideal, because if people are already going to the theater, they have an interest in a particular genre or a particular movie type. If we can match those up and get them to the library, even better. Or big billboards next to the freeway where you've got rush hour traffic. Don't you wish you had a great audiobook right now? Go to your library and such and such. But big. So obviously the easiest way to do indirect reader's advisory in your community outside your library is something really big and obvious. If you have the option for signage, great. The better they can see it, the bigger it is, wonderful. That's not always an option for a lot of us, and it can be very expensive. So if you don't have the option of buying billboards on a regular basis, we go the other direction, and we go to really specific targeted marketing. And target marketing, if you've done any work with target marketing, it's wonderful for library services. So going very, very quickly here, let's say you've got an auto parts store in town. How can you target market to your auto parts store? How can you do reader's advisory without having conversations? What would you recommend? And here we've got examples. We've got classic car books, all the Chilton auto manuals, which may or may not work depending on whether or not they sell those manuals at the store. But think about what a wonderful thing it would be if you could put a little bookmark with a list of all the books about car repair and classic cars in your local auto parts store, where it could be given to your patrons, where they could see that. There's probably a lot of folks that may or may not have used the library. I know when I showed my father that I could get the Chilton Library on my phone using the Gale databases on my Android phone, he just about fell over because he thought that was the coolest thing he had ever seen. And this is a guy who does read, but doesn't usually go to libraries. So the idea that that's somehow a library service, great marketing tool. Other ideas, we just got a brand new Murdoch's in Laramie. Signs, posters, bookmarks, again, those print materials, distributing them out there where we're visible. Books on dog training. You could create a list of books about dogs, fiction about, any fiction about farm animals, bookmarks that are available. If you can partner with your community businesses, fabulous. Gardening, again, highlighting our databases, things that they have access to 24/7 that they may not know about. But all of these different partnerships within your community, there are some wonderful ways to provide that indirect reader's advisory to folks that you simply have to define your audience. If you can kind of typify the folks that are going to go to the auto parts store, aim something at them or at Murdoch's. And the last one, farmers market. Maybe in our communities for the farmers market, we take some water, we take some books, we talk about the library, we promote. What about doing reader's advisory at the farmers market? What would you provide as an advisory service? What would you distribute? It could be books about gardening. Again, it could be books about cooking. It could be fiction based on any stories about cooking or food or anything along those lines. So there's almost no environment in your community that you couldn't provide reader's advisory services indirectly, whether it's just a handout or a sign or a poster. And think of all those people that you're reaching that may or may not step in the library on a regular basis. So that's outside the library. The next thing we're going to jump into is virtual indirect reader's advisory. And so if our groups of people that we're working with inside the library are those that we consider regular patrons, they're already coming in, we've already made that sale, they love the library. Outside the library, we've got folks who may or may not have even been in the library, don't know how it works. There'll be a new sale in the marketing world. In the virtual world, it's going to be a hodgepodge. It's going to be some of both. And there are many different ways to go about this. I'm just going to go ahead and highlight a few of them. There are a couple of videos here that I'd like to show. They may or may not play back well depending on how you're logged in. We'll go ahead and do that. And remember that this will be archived and it will be something that you can get to and view again in case the videos don't come through. Also, at the end of this particular presentation, I have direct links to this Prezi presentation. So you'd be able to get to that at any time and go back and the videos will play. But to get started, virtual indirect reader's advisory. So not interacting with people in real time, but still interacting and still matching up people with books. So the most simple and probably the most common amongst all of us is an e-newsletter. So people sign up at the library, they give us our emails, we send them out a newsletter. Include in there, not only your new books, but include a list of, if you like so-and-so, try this. Again, the movie tie-ins or any particular activity that's going on in your community. When Laramie has its big Jubilee days, we could put in a whole list of books that have to do with the local community or the, history of Laramie, Albany County. There are just a million different options here for doing that type of reader's advisory. So e-newsletters. Social networking is obviously a huge one right now, and we'll look at a couple different options beyond this. If your library doesn't have a Facebook page already, that would be a really easy and free way to get people to see what you're doing. We're going to try this year for the first time actually doing a lot of our summer reading scheduling and promotion, and maybe even have an Are You Attending option on the Albany County Facebook page. We know that it's not going to reach everyone, but it'll be interesting to see how many it does reach and how we can promote through that venue. Again, it's 24/7. We know the demographic that's using a lot of this is the 25 to 49 age women. Many of us have children, myself included, and this is one of the tools we use quite a bit right now. Blogging, obviously, if you've got somebody who's interested in blogging, they can do lists of books, they can do reviews, they can do recommendations, they can have conversations back and forth. And also on Facebook, you have the option to do book clubs. And this is something that you can do through your own Facebook page, or people can do independently. Again, you can actually have conversations, and you can do this independently with just one person on Facebook, or you can set up this application so that you can choose, and you can see on your screen that you've got fiction, good news, pre-publication, business mystery, and you can join up to read chunks of a book. And it will email you a 5-minute selection from a chapter or book. And so that gives people a way to kind of browse and decide whether or not they're interested. And again, leaving it connected to your Facebook page is going to drive more people to your Facebook page, and hopefully tell each other about it, to where you can get more traffic and, again, become more visible with the work that you do in the library. QR codes. And I'm going to start this by saying we've been playing with them some in Albany County. We're hoping to do more with this. The video that I'm going to show you, this is never the way I would do it. It's one of the more ugly ways of tagging something with a QR code, but it does show you the idea. So if you're not familiar with QR codes, they are, and you can kind of see in the background in the video, little square barcodes basically that contain information. And when scanned with a smartphone, it will direct you to a website or another location with more information. So it's pretty easy to take a particular genre and say, like this, take a picture of this, scan here, whatever. And when they snap a picture of it with their phone, it takes them to a website with a whole list of other things just like it. It could actually technically link to your catalog, or it could link to an independent list on your website. But it's a really quick way of directing people in the stacks to more information. So you could locate these on your website, you could locate them in your library, you could locate them just about anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead, and with QR codes, creating them, there are free applications for creating them. You can do this entire process using free tools. This is nothing that you have to buy. Smartphones, any Android or iPhone or any of those types of phones, you can download a free application to scan these, so you're not expecting your patrons to spend any money on it either. So anyway, here's the video, and hopefully the sound will come through well for you here. I'm going to move some things around, and we'll get going. Okay, and Sarah's letting me know that the sound was staticky, so I apologize on that one. I think for some of these videos, it's just going to be easier to view them later. You can go to YouTube and actually just put in QR codes and libraries as search terms, and it will bring up a number of different short video clips on how to use them. This was specific to Reader's Advisory, so I thought it was useful. But again, just go to YouTube. You can put in QR codes, libraries. You're going to see there are a million different functions for that particular type of technology. And finally, one that a lot of us are probably familiar with is online book clubs. So whether this is something like Goodreads, where we're actually reading the books and then writing our own reviews of them, or trading reviews back and forth, sharing with each other. This is a great way to provide reader's advisory and to get people hooked in. You can do it from this perspective of being a library and actually log in create an account as your library, and then as people create their reviews, simply post them. And then your patrons can know to go there, where they can either post their own reviews or they can read what's going on. So if you don't have a website of your own for your library that easily allows library guides or blogging, or you don't have a real good way of integrating that into your own library's website, these might be good options to direct people to. So instead of having all of this information included on your website itself, you might simply provide them a link to the library's account at Goodreads or Shelfari or Library Thing. I think what I'm going to do, since the sound is staticky on this video, is bypass this particular video. The video that I've got here is a couple minutes long, and it's on how Library Thing can work for your library, again, using it as a tool for Reader's Advisory, where you can set up an account and you can actually input information into Library Thing using ISBNs. So if you already have order lists that where you have ISBNs, you can actually cut and paste the ISBNs into your account, and it will pull up all the other reviews, which could be tens of thousands of reviews and comments, and somebody's given it 3 stars out of 5, but it will pull in all that data so that when people look at your particular Library Thing account, they will see all of these different books that are either being listed or recommended or with your own comments, but they'll also see all of those other comments and recommendations from other folks that have done those reviews. So in some ways, it's similar to if you go to Amazon and you see, regular Joe Schmo's comments about the last book he read listed at the bottom of the title. The nice part about it is this gives you a lot more than that, and you're going to be able to see and link to similar titles. There's a lot of tagging that goes on by genre and topic, so people can tag books for, horror fiction or specific tags. And you can just click on those and move through it. So rather than watch the video, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that. We're going to pop through the video part and make sure that it doesn't start playing here. There we go. So that's the virtual side. So today, really what we've talked about has been, with Indirect Reader's Advisory, providing that service within the library to patrons who are already inside using displays, print, and your own website if we're driving them there. From having come to the library. Indirect Reader's Advisory outside the library, very often to people who are not regular library users, specifically using target marketing ideas. And then that virtual realm where there are so many different options out there, whether it's an online book club or your Facebook page or an e-newsletter. And again, that's going to hit both regular library users as well as non-library users if they're able to find you from the web, from Googling or from going to Library Thing. So 3 different areas there. I'm going to go ahead and finish up here by just giving you this information. If you're taking notes, the Prezi itself that we just looked at, including the embedded videos, is at tinyurl.com/indirectra, and that should get you directly to this presentation. And then the resource list, which is also available through the Get on the Bus site, and we'll make sure that the Prezi link is also on the Get on the Bus site, is there as well. So if you do manage to get to the Prezi and you're looking through that, please feel free to use it and distribute as you feel necessary. It's not a problem. And then the resource list is a list of print and other resources, bring it up here, for Indirect Reader's Advisory specifically. And you'll notice there are some articles. I tried to keep things most current. This changes very frequently, especially when it comes to technology. One of the best books I've come across that's a really recent publication. The Stephanie Matta, Maata, excuse me, A Few Good Books Using Contemporary Readers Advisory Strategies to Connect Readers with Books. Fabulous section on using digital tools. And it's designed for not only the indirect model of not having the actual verbal conversation, the live conversation, but it actually has chapters on using those technologies for assisting with the actual in-person live conversation, as well as the indirect, out there in cyberspace, or, bookmarks dropped off at the local auto parts store. It's really, really good for that. And then there are also a few others. And again, a lot of these are linked on the Get on the Bus site. The Reader's Advisory Wiki has some great ideas. Using QR codes in libraries, if you want more information there. And then some webinars and archived courses and presentations. Redefining the reader. Some of these are actually just archives, kind of similar to what we're doing right now with Get on the Bus. Some of these are actually courses that have been offered. But if this is something that really interests you, there are some, longer courses out there that you can link to from here. At that point, Sarah, I'm going to hand it back to you and take any questions that folks might have.
Great. Thank you very much, Tamara. That was a wonderful presentation. And I'm going to go ahead and leave you unmuted. For those of you who didn't participate in last week's webinars, and since we are still new to this software, I'll just go over. For those of you who have a mic or an integrated headset or are using the phone option and would like to share your question or comment with the group, go ahead and raise your hand. Next to your name, you'll see a little, kind of a chubby little hand, and I will unmute you and you can share your question or comment. Or you will all have a chat box available where you can type one, and I will see that and share it with the group. If you don't see what I'm referring to, you will see in the upper right-hand corner of your screen 3 little icons, the top one being a red rectangle with an arrow, and that will maximize your chat screen. Also, if you just have those 3 icons, the last icon is the little hand. So I'll just wait a moment and see if any questions come through. While I'm waiting to do that, I'll go ahead and go back to the Get on the Bus website just to review a few other pieces that I didn't cover at the beginning of the presentation. Let me just go back to my screen. Okay. I still have Cass's presentation there, but Tamara's presentation will be archived under Beyond the Desk, Indirect Reader's Advisory. The homework questions are at the bottom here, and you can review those and comment. Also, if you don't get an opportunity to ask a question here, you can feel free to type a question or comment in the homework portion, in the comments portion of each page, and Tamara and I will be checking in on those, or if something just comes to you later. We have several of the great links that Tamara shared with us today, and we will also be posting those YouTube video links that we weren't able to get through on the recording. And one other thing I will mention, just an aside with regards to May's presentations. Our schedule changed around just a little bit, and you'll notice on May 5th we don't currently have something scheduled, and you can get an idea of what other folks are going to be talking about. I thought the display that Tamara showed of the cookbooks was fun because another member of the Albany County staff will be talking about nonfiction for foodies, so that display is right up her alley. But if there are any genres or topics that you don't see listed here that you're passionate about and want to just share with us, just a short 15-20 minute presentation, please email me on that and we can schedule. It is coming up close. That would be next week, but I can help you out with that. Doesn't look like we have any other questions or comments coming in today, but again, if you have any concerns, please email me or go ahead and comment on the Get on the Bus Wyoming.wordpress.com website, and we'll go ahead and conclude today's presentation. This Thursday, it will be Chris from the State Library who most of you are familiar with her wonderful database of the month programs, and she'll be going over some of the Go Wild tools that we have that can help us with our readers advisory skills. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.